September 3rd, 1993, Baltimore, Maryland. A mother is standing in a shopping center parking lot holding her 2-month-old daughter. In the span of seconds, everything changes. A stranger approaches, shoves the mother aside, and snatches the baby from her arms. He disappears into the crowd. The infant, Mariah Lee Mozingo, is never seen again. What happened next would become one of the most baffling aspects of this case. Not the kidnapping itself, but what didn't happen afterward. No massive search efforts, no Amber Alerts, no age progression photos, no follow-up investigations that we can find documented anywhere. It's as if a 2-month-old baby simply vanished from existence and the world forgot she ever lived. This is the story of Mariah Lee Mozingo, and it's unlike any missing child case you've ever heard. July 9th, 1993. Mariah Lee Mozingo is born in Baltimore, Maryland. She's a beautiful baby with blonde hair and striking blue eyes. At 2 months old, she weighs just 10 pounds and measures 12 inches long. She is, by all accounts, a healthy, normal infant living with her mother in the 3900 block of Erdman Avenue. The Erdman Shopping Center sits practically next door to their home. It's one of those typical neighborhood shopping areas where local families run their errands, grab groceries, pick up necessities. Nothing unusual, nothing that would suggest it would become the site of one of Baltimore's most mysterious disappearances. September 3rd, 1993. 1:00 p.m. Mariah's mother loads her baby into the car for what should be a routine trip. They arrive at the Erdman Shopping Center parking lot. It's a Friday afternoon. People are going about their business. Cars are coming and going. Life is proceeding normally. Then everything goes wrong. According to the mother's account to police, she's at her car with Mariah when a man approaches. He's a complete stranger. No words are exchanged. No demands are made. He simply shoves the mother aside with enough force to catch her off guard, reaches into the car, and grabs 2-month-old Mariah. The man runs. The mother, presumably in shock, doesn't pursue him into the shopping center for help. Instead, she makes a decision that would later raise questions. She drives home, just a few blocks away on Erdman Avenue, and calls police from there. By the time authorities arrive and begin searching, the trail is already cold. The stranger and baby Mariah have vanished completely. Now here's where this case takes a turn that defies everything we know about missing children investigations. What happened next was essentially nothing. The Baltimore Sun, the city's major newspaper, published one brief article about Mariah's disappearance the day after it happened. One article, then silence. No follow-up stories, no community searches, no appeals from law enforcement for information, no sketch of the suspect despite having a witness who saw him up close. This isn't how missing baby cases typically unfold. When infants disappear, especially in broad daylight kidnappings, they generate massive media attention. Search teams scour neighborhoods. Age progression photos are created and updated regularly. The cases stay in the public eye for years, sometimes decades. But not Mariah's case. Researchers who have tried to find more information about this disappearance hit dead ends everywhere they look. No archived newspaper articles beyond that single day-after report, no police press conferences, no appeals from the family, no crime scene details, no suspect descriptions beyond the basic fact that it was a male stranger. If you've been following true crime for any length of time, you know this level of silence around a baby kidnapping is virtually unprecedented. And it raises uncomfortable questions about what really happened that September afternoon. Let's examine what we do know. Mariah was 2 months old when she disappeared. Born on July 9th, 1993, she would be 32 years old today if she's still alive. She was Caucasian with blonde hair and blue eyes. She weighed 10 pounds and was 12 inches tall. These are the basic facts that appear in missing persons databases. The location was the 3900 block of Erdman Avenue in Baltimore, specifically the shopping center parking lot. The family lived on the same block, making it a neighborhood they knew well. The time was 1 p.m. on a Friday, meaning there should have been plenty of potential witnesses around. The suspect was described only as a male stranger who physically pushed the mother aside and took the baby. No age, height, weight, clothing description, or other identifying details were ever released publicly. No composite sketch was ever created or distributed. Here's what makes this case even more puzzling. In 1993, Baltimore was no stranger to serious crime. The city's homicide rate was climbing toward record levels. Drug violence was rampant. But even in a city dealing with major crime problems, the kidnapping of a 2-month-old baby should have been front-page news. Yet it wasn't. The lack of coverage becomes even more strange when you consider that 1993 was also the year that other high-profile child abduction cases were dominating national headlines. The public was very much focused on missing children cases. Media outlets were covering these stories extensively. Law enforcement agencies were under pressure to solve them quickly. But somehow, Mariah Lee Mozingo's case fell through every crack. If you're finding this story as compelling as thousands of others have, make sure you hit that subscribe button. We dive deep into cases that mainstream media overlooks, and your support helps us bring these forgotten stories to light. 31 years have passed since Mariah disappeared. In that time, missing persons databases have been created and updated. Cold case units have been established. DNA technology has revolutionized investigations. Age progression software has become incredibly sophisticated. Yet Mariah's case shows no signs of any of these advances being applied. No age progression photos exist showing what she might look like today. No DNA profiles have been entered into databases that we can find documented. No cold case reviews have been publicly announced. The Charlie Project, one of the most comprehensive missing persons databases in the country, last updated Mariah's case in June 2021. The update didn't add new information about the investigation. It simply refined some details about the disappearance itself. This raises a critical question that gets to the heart of why some cases receive attention while others don't. What determines which missing children become household names and which ones are forgotten? We've seen cases where missing children become national obsessions. Their faces appear on billboards, milk cartons, and television screens for years. Their families become advocates. Their cases spawn documentaries, books, and endless media coverage. Then we have cases like Mariah's, where a 2-month-old baby vanishes in broad daylight, and somehow the world moves on as if it never happened. The location of Mariah's disappearance adds another layer to consider. The Erdman Shopping Center sits in East Baltimore, an area that in 1993 was dealing with significant economic challenges. The neighborhood was predominantly working class, with many families struggling with the economic changes affecting the city. Could the lack of media attention be connected to socio-economic factors? Would a baby kidnapped from a wealthy suburb have received different treatment? These are uncomfortable questions, but they're worth asking when trying to understand how a case like this falls through the cracks so completely. The mother's decision to drive home rather than immediately seeking help at the shopping center has been questioned by online researchers following the case. The shopping center would have had businesses with phones, employees who could have called police, and potentially security measures. Going home meant losing precious minutes when every second could have mattered. However, it's important to note that people react differently to trauma. Shock can cause people to make decisions that seem illogical in hindsight. The family lived just blocks away, so returning home might have felt like the fastest way to get help. Without more details about the mother's state of mind or the specific circumstances, it's impossible to draw conclusions about this decision. What we can say is that by the time police arrived and began their investigation, the kidnapper had a significant head start. In a crime like this, where the perpetrator could disappear into traffic or into buildings, even a few minutes can mean the difference between recovery and permanent disappearance. The investigation itself remains largely a mystery. Standard procedure for infant kidnappings includes interviewing witnesses, canvassing the area for additional information, checking security cameras if available, and creating detailed suspect descriptions. Whether any of these steps were taken in Mariah's case is unknown because virtually no details about the investigation have ever been made public. This silence is particularly striking when compared to other Baltimore missing persons cases from the same era. Even cases that weren't solved often generated ongoing media coverage, periodic updates from police, and continued appeals for information from the community. Here's something that will shock you about how thoroughly this case has been forgotten. Make sure you're subscribed, because we're about to reveal just how deep this mystery goes, and you won't want to miss what we've uncovered. Online researchers and amateur investigators have spent years trying to find any additional information about Mariah's case. They've searched newspaper archives, contacted local media outlets, and scoured police records that are publicly available. The results are always the same: virtually nothing beyond the basic facts of the disappearance. This level of information scarcity is almost unheard of in missing persons cases. Even cases that received minimal media attention at the time usually have some documentation trail: police reports, witness statements, follow-up investigations, periodic reviews. Something. But Mariah's case appears to exist in a documentation void that's difficult to explain through normal investigative processes. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children includes Mariah in their database, but with the same minimal information that's been available since 1993. No updates about new leads, no revised suspect information, no age progression photos to show what she might look like today as a 32-year-old woman. This absence of age progression photos is particularly notable. The technology for creating these images has been available for decades and is routinely used for long-term missing children cases. The fact that none exist for Mariah suggests either a lack of resources dedicated to her case or a determination that creating them wouldn't be useful for reasons that haven't been made public. For a case involving an infant, age progression would typically be done at regular intervals. What would Mariah have looked like as a toddler, as a school-age child, as a teenager, as a young adult? These images often prove crucial in generating new leads and keeping cases in the public eye. Their absence speaks volumes about how this case has been handled over the past 3 decades. The suspect in Mariah's case remains as much of a mystery today as he was in 1993. No composite sketch was ever released. No detailed description was ever provided to the public. We know only that he was male and that he was unknown to the family. This lack of suspect information is puzzling for several reasons. The mother had a direct encounter with the kidnapper. She was close enough that he was able to physically push her aside. She should have been able to provide details about his appearance, approximate age, clothing, and other identifying characteristics. Why this information was never released publicly remains unexplained. Was it withheld as part of investigative strategy? Was the mother unable to provide detailed descriptions due to trauma or shock? Were there details that raised questions about the account itself? Without access to police files or investigative records, these questions remain unanswered. The timing of Mariah's disappearance, September 3, 1993, places it in an interesting context within Baltimore's crime history. The city was experiencing high crime rates, particularly violent crime related to the drug trade. Police resources were stretched thin, dealing with homicides and drug-related violence. Could Mariah's case have been deprioritized due to these resource constraints? It's possible, but kidnapping cases, especially those involving infants, typically receive high priority regardless of other crime pressures. The vulnerability of the victim and the serious nature of the crime usually ensure significant investigative attention. Yet the evidence suggests that didn't happen in this case. The geographic area where Mariah disappeared has undergone significant changes since 1993. Urban renewal projects, demographic shifts, and economic development have transformed many Baltimore neighborhoods. Some of the businesses that were operating at the Erdman Shopping Center in 1993 may no longer exist. This passage of time creates additional challenges for any future investigation efforts. Potential witnesses have moved away, died, or forgotten crucial details. Physical evidence has likely been lost or degraded. The crime scene itself has been altered by 3 decades of change. However, it also means that someone who may have been reluctant to come forward in 1993 might be willing to share information now. People who were children at the time are now adults. Individuals who may have feared consequences then might feel differently today. Cold cases often break open when circumstances change, when new witnesses emerge, or when someone finally decides to speak up about information they've been carrying for years. The question is whether anyone is actively working to solve Mariah's case today, or whether it remains as forgotten by law enforcement as it appears to be by the media. Modern technology offers tools that weren't available in 1993. DNA analysis, digital forensics, advanced databases, and sophisticated investigative techniques could potentially shed new light on what happened to Mariah. But these tools are only useful if they're actually being applied to the case. There's no public evidence that any modern investigative techniques have been used to re-examine Mariah's disappearance. No announcements about DNA testing, no digital reconstructions of the crime scene, no appeals for information using current technology platforms. This suggests that the case may be as cold today as it was hot in the immediate aftermath of the disappearance. For true crime followers, Mariah's case represents something troubling about how missing persons investigations are prioritized and resourced. It challenges assumptions about which cases receive attention and which ones don't. It raises questions about systemic issues that may cause some victims to be forgotten while others become cause célèbres. Most importantly, it reminds us that behind every unsolved case is a real person whose life was cut short or forever altered. Mariah Lee Mozingo was a 2-month-old baby with blonde hair and blue eyes who deserved better than to simply vanish from public memory. If she survived her kidnapping, she's now 32 years old. She may have no memory of her early life or her real identity. She may be living under a different name, completely unaware of the circumstances that brought her to wherever she is today. Or she may not have survived at all, and her case remains one of thousands of unsolved murders that haunt our justice system. What we know for certain is that 31 years ago, a baby girl disappeared in Baltimore. And despite living in an age of unprecedented information sharing and investigative capability, we know barely more about what happened to her today than we did the day she vanished. This is the reality of Mariah Lee Mozingo's case. No dramatic revelations, no breakthrough discoveries, no satisfying conclusions, just the troubling story of how a 2-month-old baby could disappear in broad daylight and somehow be forgotten by almost everyone who should have been working to bring her home. If this case has moved you the way it's moved thousands of others who've discovered Mariah's story, hit that subscribe button and share this video. Sometimes the most important cases are the ones that aren't getting attention. Your engagement helps ensure that stories like Mariah's don't stay buried in the digital archives of forgotten crimes. The search for Mariah Lee Mozingo continues, even if it's being carried out by citizen investigators rather than official channels. Her case serves as a reminder that justice doesn't have an expiration date, and that every missing person deserves to be remembered, searched for, and brought home. 31 years later, the questions remain the same. What happened to Mariah Lee Mozingo? Who took her? Is she still alive? And why has her case been allowed to fade into obscurity when it should have been front-page news? Until these questions are answered, Mariah's story remains unfinished. A 2-month-old baby who vanished without a trace, in a case that challenges everything we think we know about how missing children investigations should work. This is her story. This is her legacy. And this is why we must never stop asking what happened to Mariah Lee Mozingo.